This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Helping you find emotional, spiritual, and physical balance. What does your future hold? It's time to find out with Psychic Suzanna.
Hello, you are right where you need to be. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, please be aware you can always find us at PsychicSuzanna.com. That has the schedule that lets you know, get a free question. You can listen to all the old radio shows, which are inspirational. Or you could go to KFAB.com, and at that website, you're going to find out what you need to know about anything in the Omaha and the Omaha area. If you need to know about the weather, if you need to know about the weather conditions, the road conditions, all of that is at KFAB.com. So please find us. We're here for you. Also, join me at Facebook at Susanna Stickney, where you get an inside scoop of what's coming up on the show, on Facebook at Susanna Stickney, or Twitter. You can find me in both places. This show is centered around you and your life, helping you to get answers to questions you know, and maybe even some you don't know you have yet. But this is all about education. This is your online class to improve your life, to be stronger, healthier, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. That's what we're all about. Now, today's guest is someone that we've talked to before. His name is Paul Kaye. He is with the MSIA organization. And the book we're going to be talking about is Living the Spiritual Principles of Health and Well-Being. Welcome to the show again, Paul.
Great to be back, Susanna. Thank you for having me on.
I'm glad you had a wonderful trip. Is that correct? We didn't get any postcards, but you were overseas in Scotland, England, Wales, and helping them to better themselves. Now you're here in Omaha, the middle of the world. Let's talk, okay?
Looking forward to it.
All right. Now, the question I have to you is, how do you get spiritually healthy? Is spiritually combining with our body? Is that the name of the book, the question of the book, Living the Spiritual Principles of Health and Well-Being? Tell me about the book. Tell me about that thought.
Well, this is a very practical book, so we want to be talking about actually how it impacts us in the physical world as well. But what we do in the spiritual world impacts that, and we can use certain spiritual principles to assist us become healthy in this world. For example, I'm sure you know that probably one of the great ways that you attune to a person is you begin by relaxing. That's very important. It's very difficult to be spiritually attuned when you're in a tense state, a contracted state. So really one of the principles that we use is to simply just to relax. It's actually the fourth spiritual principle. And just relaxation not only opens us up spiritually, but it also opens us up emotionally, it opens up mentally, and it opens us up physically.
How about if we're in a very stressful life? I mean, how do we relax when we have to pay our bills, when we have to do all that? How do we get there? How do we learn to relax? How do we handle stress?
Well, that's a very big question indeed, and it's something that's really a lifelong pursuit in many ways. It's not something that we just do it once. We just have to keep reminding ourselves and doing it over and over again. And I kind of came up, because stress is such a part of everyone's life, I came up with my own 12 principles of stress-free living, or 12 keys to stress-free living. And one of them, the first one, starts out by don't rush. Just stop rushing. You know, it doesn't do you any good to be rushing around. Slow down, wait, pause. You can just add a little pause in your life. As you go through your life, just take a moment to pause. You know, I used to, when I was driving, I used to see stoplights as obstacles getting in the way of me reaching my destination. You know what they are for me now? They're resting points. When the light turns red, I go, this is an opportunity for me to rest, to breathe, to pause, to recover, and then get going again. And we need to look at our lives more in those terms. Now,
so to what you're really saying is we have to take where we are and handle the stress in a different way.
Completely. Now, I wrote the book with my spiritual teacher for the last 40 years, Dr. John Roger. And John Roger taught when I first went to work for him, and I've been working for him for about 35 years now, and studying with him for about 40. And when I first went to work for him in California, I moved out from London, and my mother came out, and she saw that I just seemed to be under a lot of stress. So, of course, being a Jewish mother, she went straight to John Roger and said, look, my Paul is working too hard. He's under too much pressure. And John Roger said, Paul isn't under any pressure. He has to learn to stop pressuring himself. Huh. And, that was a very simple thing. But really, when you consider it, really 99% of your listeners' pressure is self-created. We can point to outside circumstances, but we don't have to let them affect us in the way that we do. So that a lot of our pressures are internally generated. And once we get that idea, we can start to change it around a little bit. So we need to release that internal pressure that we think is being generated externally. Okay.
So as we release this pressure, give me a couple steps to do it besides being in the stoplight and being there at that point. What else would you suggest?
Well, exhale.
Exhale?
Yes, because most of us are just breathing in and out, and we tend to breathe in our chest and stuff, and we don't ever get a lot of the stale air out of our system. So really? if we can just breathe out the next time, as your listeners can do this because they're not talking, but if they just breathe out a little bit and just go like a second more than they would normally do, they're releasing more air. It's interesting, this sympathetic nervous system that kind of gets us going, really, gets our energy going, and the parasympathetic nervous system that relaxes us. So we want to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system because we're really hyped up most of the time. When we breathe in, we actually trigger the sympathetic nervous system. When we breathe out, we trigger the parasympathetic, which is the relaxation response. And if we just breathe out just a little bit, I'm not talking about forcefully emptying the lungs. I'm just talking about just going a bit further with the exhale, and then just wait to receive the inhale. We'll just start to relax. It's quite amazing.
Do you think that's why some people smoke, so they can breathe out more? I mean, could that be a subconscious thought?
No, I don't think. I think people smoke because they're tense and they actually want to hold more. I mean, when my father was, when I was a young lad and I watched my father, he would take in a deep breath, he would hold it, and so that he would get that nicotine to calm him down, and then he would start talking, and I never saw the smoke exit. I mean, it was just a scary thing. So I think people are smoking just to calm themselves down, to have something in their hands, to have something in their mouth, to have something in their body. The problem with smoking is it's just blatantly unhealthy. I mean, it's a very fast way to destroy yourself.
Okay, all right. So we're working with our breath. And in all honesty, how do we know that we're getting healthier? Give me some more steps, if you will.
Well, I mean, you just mentioned how do we know if we're getting healthier, and I think it's a very good question because I mean a lot of us go on diets and we do all of these things to try and get healthier, but really, I mean, if you're in a happy state, if you're really enjoying life, I think that's a very healthy state to be in. And a lot of us aren't. A lot of us, as you said, are just worried. There's a lot of things to worry about if you want to worry. If you just pick up the newspapers, you can just have a whole, just an eyeful of things to worry about. But one of my steps of stress-free living is the second step is don't worry ever. And if anybody can tell me the positive benefits of worrying, I will start to worry. But it's one of those things that there doesn't seem to be any upside to at all. It's just like there's just a lot of downside. It's not good for their health. It's not good for anything.
It's actually almost a trained habit. I tell my clients that worry is an insult to God, and it's saying, God, listen, you can't handle my life. You can handle the stars, you can handle the earth, you can handle the plants, you can handle the ocean, but not my life. So I always say worry is an insult to God and probably not one of the healthiest things we do. So,
well, no, you're right on top of it. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's really fantastic. So we're on the same page here. I mean, worrying is not a good thing. Yet, a lot of the stress that we're under comes from this habitual, as you so correctly called it, worry. I mean, someone described it as worrying is praying for what you don't want, and I think that's also a nice way of phrasing it.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a little break. We're coming back, and we're going to want to talk to you some more about the book, Living the Spiritual Principles of Health and Well-Being. I must tell you, when I first contacted Paul, from the MSIA organization. You can find him at msiaorg.org. When I first contacted him, he sent me quite a few books. I must tell you, I have grown immensely with this book. And my reader, I always have people reading the books. They said this book is a very simply and easily understood book with simple steps that can help you be healthier both spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And I'm coming back with Paul, asking him, how do we do that? This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. We will be right back. Stay with us. We're
Life
growing
with
together.
Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB.
Yes, you are right where you need to be. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, please find us at PsychicSuzanna.com, where you can get a free question, get the schedule, find out what we're doing. KFAB.com, you find out the weather, you find out the roads, you find out anything that's happening with Big Red Football. We are that station you need to have on your dial. Now, please join us on Facebook at Susanna Stickney. That's where you find out what's going on in my life in the day. I try to give you an affirmation and a thought that will help you every day. And also on Facebook and Twitter. And also, Life with Psychic Suzanna. I don't know if it's out there, but if it is, I'll post. Here's the show is centered around you, and it's about helping you find answers to the questions you may know you have and you may not know you have. Right now, we're talking to Paul Kaye, who is wrote the book with his teacher, Living the Spiritual Principles of Health and Well-Being. Thank you, Paul, for coming back on air with us.
Oh, it's terrific. You know, when I get to talk about these subjects, you know, it moves me into that place as well. So when I'm talking about relaxation, I'm also realizing, wait a minute, I could be more relaxed myself. So it's really nice to be able to do this.
Well, the teacher always does learn when they teach. The teacher always does learn. What would you say the most important spiritual principles we could use to get ourselves healthy today? I really suggest this book, but tell me about the most important spiritual principles.
Well, the one thing that I like, and I don't think your listeners are going to be terribly happy with this because it does demand some effort, but the principle that I love is on my keys for stress-free living, and it's also in the spiritual principles in the book, and that is complete. Complete. What we do is we have so many incompleted tasks in our lives that are hanging out there, and the problem about that is they're all pulling on our energy. And it's amazing if you can just make a list of all the things that are incomplete and just start to move things towards completion. Now, you don't have to actually really complete everything, but you have to declare it complete. And if you declare it complete, it has to be complete. In other words, if you have a half-read book that you've been hanging out there for like 10 years that you said always going to get to, it's just like if you just take a look at it, open it, and go, I declare it complete, and shut it and put it away or give it away, it's done. And believe it or not, that will start to return energy to you. Even if you start to complete a task and just say, I'm going to do it in 10 steps, and you start with one step and you know that you're going to complete the rest, that will start to return energy back to you. And it would be amazing to find how much tension and how much energy you have in this incompleted task. So anybody who's lost a job or looking for a job, I would just say complete everything you can that you've started so you can create space and more energy in your life. So when that new opportunity comes along, you can just go for it and know that everything behind you is cleaned up.
Wow. Wow. So it is part of the spiritual. It is a lot of the mental stuff, correct?
Well, the spiritual and the mental and the emotional, they're all tied together. Really, in a way, you can't say anything is not spiritual, because you look at the physical world and you could just say that really what it is condensed spirit. It's not the highest level of spirit, but it's more the condensed level of spirit, and it's really a springboard for us to rise into a higher consciousness. So we have lots that we can do here, and living a spiritually oriented life can really assist us on so many levels. And we can tell sometimes, a lot of times, a person's spirituality by the way that they're of service, because really being of service, particularly unconditional services, is the highest level of consciousness I think that we can demonstrate on the planet.
You know, I know several clients who are looking for love, and I one of the things that I always give out affirmations to people who come check me out, and one of the things I always say is I am love, or I am open to love, because I feel like a lot of us aren't open to being healthy emotionally, spiritually, and physically. I think sometimes our issues become our drama. How do you feel about that?
Yes, well, completely, absolutely, and this is the thing. I mean, we don't have to look outside of ourselves for love. The love that we're looking outside of ourselves for is not really the true unconditional spiritual love. And you're absolutely right on. We actually are love. But we have it veiled in so many concerns, and that's why, we want to complete, we want to slow down, we want to pause, we want to we relax. All of these things are just getting us to come to a place inside where we can experience the purity of who we are. And what's interesting about that purity is it doesn't get into the world. We tend to look at ourselves and we look at our behavior and say, how could I possibly be pure? How could I possibly be love? And yet, behind all of that is a loving place, but we have to come into a stillness and an attunement with it, and that takes a little bit of practice. But one of the ways we can start is by thinking of someone who demonstrated love to us, where we had that feeling of unconditional love, and really take that as a reference point and take that inside of us, because really it's the unconditional love that we want to really go for, not the affection, not the romantic love, which is good and really fine and wonderful in its own way, but the unconditional love is the love that endures.
Wow. I was telling you that Breathing in Peace and Breathing of the Heart, you have a CD of this. Have you recalled what it is yet?
Yes, I think that's from the book called The Rest of Your Life.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yes, Finding Repose in the Beloved, and that book, again, based on John Rogers' teachings over the years, he's done so many talks, is really, again, finding repose. It's really coming to exactly what we were just talking about, just coming to that place of slowing down enough that we can be in touch with our true selves. And we really want to touch into that, because in a way that's home base. If we can touch into that and be in that, then the worries of the world will not really be able to touch us.
Oh, wow. Now, I believe I have a question to you unbeknownst the book. I must tell you, this weekend I went to a movie, and I love this town because we have eclectic movies that you would not find other places. And the book was called Sarah's Key, and it was about a girl who was protecting her brother and locked him in a closet, and she could never live with that guilt. And he died because she was taken away by Hitler's group in France. So all of this is, how do we deal with the group mentality of that there are horrible things in the world? I'm taking you off the book, but I look at you as a wonderful spiritual counselor. How do we understand when there's so much ugliness in the world? how do we not take it on ourselves and feel responsible for others' horrible actions?
Well, this is obviously a very, very relevant question as we look at everything that's going on in the world. There's a couple of responses to that, and I want to keep it really practical because I want people to understand. The first one, I want to give you a quote from Helen Keller, and I think most of your listeners will know who Helen Keller was, but I think she was basically deaf and mute as well. I think she could speak, but she couldn't see. She was deaf and she couldn't see. And she said that the world is full of suffering, but it is also full of the overcoming of suffering. And I think when we look at our heroes, it's not that suffering is necessarily as terrible as we make it, but it's just like it's an opportunity for us to transcend, to realize that there's something more than what we look for in this world. And that's the first thing. But the other thing to realize is as much as we see, as much atrocities as we see, there's a book recently came out by Steven Pinker. It's actually just out this month. And in it, he's a Harvard psychologist and professor, and he's just delineating how much better things are, how much less violent the world has become. So that even though we look at the world we live in as really rife with troubles, actually it's the best period there's ever been in human history. And I think we need to come to a place of gratitude for the blessings that we have in our lives and just continue to beam our love and our light into the world and our peace and not get caught up in the troubles, and just to not necessarily buy into all the dramatic and horrible things that are going on, and just realize things are actually a lot better than they have ever been. People are living longer, people are healthier, people are, and it's and this is an 830-page book where he lays out human history and all of that. So I just ask that the listeners not buy into so much. Of course, we hear it all the time in the press, and we think it's going on all around us, but actually it's much less than ever before. It's not negating that it doesn't happen. I'm not saying obviously it does, but just not to feel that this is the worst time ever. And if today you're you're in your home and you've had a good meal and you're listening to this radio show and you have shelter over your head, just be completely grateful, because gratitude is a great pathway to health. If you can just think of all the things you're grateful for and just take that in and in a sense put your hands up to heaven and just say thank you, because thank you really is a fantastic prayer.
All right. We're going to come right back, and then I want you to tell us how we find you. I'm talking to our Paul Kaye. He's with the MSIA organization. You can find it online by MSIA. We'll be right back with him. He wrote the book, Living the Spiritual Principles of Health and Well-Being. We'll be right back. Yes, this is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. I am talking to Paul Kaye of MSIA organization, and he wrote the book with his teacher, Living the Spiritual Principles of Health and Well-Being. This is a great book, easily to be read. Paul, can you give us under a minute how to find you and what we can find?
Well, you can buy the book online, Living the Spiritual Principles of Health and Well-Being by John Roger and myself, Paul Kaye. You can contact me by email if anybody was interested, but just by my initials, pk@msia.org. And that's one easy way, and I can just forward whatever your interest is. I can just forward that on, whatever book or principles you're looking for.
And I love the MSIA. What does that stand for? I love their webpage.
Yes, that's at msia.org, and it stands for the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness. And it's an ecumenical approach to living, to spiritual living.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My pleasure.
We'll be back, and we will talk with you again, Paul. You've been a wonderful guest. And as soon as we come back from the news, we're going to be talking to transpersonal health. We're talking to my friend Chanel, and she's going to be talking about healthy life through chakras. Stay tuned. Hello, know anything. We got you covered at KFAB. You can go online, see about the roads, the construction, the latest news in this area. You want to keep